You're listening to The High Upside Show, a podcast that allows people like you and me to invest our money in a more entertaining way. My name is Keenan Rivals. I'm a photographer by the day, but I make most of my money by flipping cards. In this show, I'll be sitting down with you and sharing my best practices. You'll learn my process, the lessons I've learned, and more importantly, who you should be buying. What's up, guys, and welcome back to The High Upside Show. It's your host, Keenan Rivals, bringing you all another podcast straight from my DMs. I love it when you guys message me and ask me questions because it really just helps set the tone for like where we're all at in this market. Sometimes I overlook things or I don't talk about things that really need to be talked about. So yesterday I received a DM from somebody who's a fan of the show, and they were kind of asking if I think they should buy a Ja Morant card, number 25 for like $300. And I straight up just told him like, no, I don't think it's a good investment. And he's like super confused, like, well, why wouldn't it be a good investment? And in my mind, I'm like, well, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be holding on to that card. It's just not something that's super easy to sell. And he's like, but it's Ja Morant. He's going to win Rookie of the Year. I probably can flip this card for $700. And I'm like, yeah, on paper, that sounds great. But in real life, that's going to be a hard card to move. You know, you're going to have to find the right collector, the right person with $700, somebody who sees further potential in that card, which is probably not many people. And I'm like, look, some of the best cards in this hobby don't go $700. Like Luka is somebody who averages 30 points per game, and his, Optic Holo doesn't go $700. Some of his rookie auto patches don't go for $700. So I'm trying to explain to him like, yeah, that sounds good and it makes sense like mentally, but the idea of somebody paying $700 for this card to where it becomes an easy flip for you is extremely rare. And he just didn't get it. He's just like, but it's Ja Morant. Like he's going to be one of the greatest players in basketball. And I'm like, yeah, potentially. But Trae Young is one of the greatest players in basketball on a scoring level. And a lot of his cards don't go that much money. Lamar Jackson's one of the best players in football. And, his select field level silver doesn't go for that much money. And then he responded to, well, I saw LeBron James sell for $300. So Ja Morant rookie year is definitely going to be worth more. And that's when I kind of, let go of the conversation because it got to, me explaining a lot. And I'm like, maybe this is better suited for the podcast, So a few things. When you buy a player, you have to think about what you're going to sell the card for before you buy it and who's going to buy the card. Are you looking to sell this card to an investor? Are you looking to sell this card to a collector? Or are you looking to sell this card to somebody who might be building a set? Those are typically the 3 buyers that we have in this space: set builders, investors, and collectors. Now, this Ja Morant card in particular was from Noir. Not a super popular set, but people still like it. So I'm like, yeah, this has collector written all over it, and 9 times out of 10, an investor is not going to buy this card at your projected $700 price point and think that he's going to be able to flip it. And there's also just not a lot of set collectors within that set, I'm assuming. So this one had collector written all over it. So once you kind of figure that out, then you have to understand if your price is realistic. Is somebody going to pay $700 for this card? To then you go do some research. When you do research on Ja Morant, you don't compare him to LeBron James. LeBron James has way more collectors. They're way more hungrier, and they're way more crazy about getting every rare LeBron James card. So if it's a new product that just released, and LeBron James fans are going to try to secure their card right away, whatever price that that it costs. Over time, those prices are probably going to dwindle down. Or in LeBron's case, they might go up because he has a lot more collectors, so they're competing for that card. There's only 25 of them. They're all going to come in and try to make sure they're one of the 25 to get it. Ja Morant, on the other hand, that's not really happening. He has some collectors, but there's not a lot of people who are on the Ja Morant band camp that are willing to pay $700, in my opinion. So yeah, whenever you buy a card and you're kind of comparing comps or just trying to gauge his price point, you don't compare him to the best player in basketball, arguably the best player of all time. You compare him to somebody who's on his level. Maybe you go Trae Young, maybe you go Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Those are kind of the price points and the potential we see for Ja Morant. In this case, Ja Morant's outselling Trae Young. I don't think that's going to continue to happen. That's not going to be a long-term thing. So in my mind, I see Ja Morant falling to Trae Young prices. So again, after doing that evaluation, I deemed it as a bad investment. The second reason was I told him, hey, I just see better plays out there for the money. Yes, this car is numbered to 25. Yes, it's new, but paying $330 to make $700 may not always be the best play. Like you might be able to take that $300, get into a few different positions, diversify, and, make a little bit more money or make the same amount of money, but have lower risk. And that's what this podcast is kind of about. It's about lowering your risk, but still having really good returns. I think that's the best way to invest within this market. I think a lot of us are getting really caught up into like these rare cards, parallels, silvers, only 100 made. And look, I'm guilty of it too. I've been buying like golds, and, I've talked about this before. I've been buying rare cards left and right. And it's just like, is it worth it? Is it worth the stress? A lot of us are getting more comfortable spending more money. But what we're finding is that these rare cards are a lot harder to sell. It's basically eBay or nothing. And even then, it takes a long time to sell the card. When you're selling a card for $700, you enter a whole new realm of cards. It's between, it's do I buy your Ja Morant number to 25, or do I go buy this Stephen Curry Bowman rookie? There's so many more attractive options at that price point of, quote unquote guaranteed players. Do I get your Ja Morant number to 25, or do I go get a Jason Tatum Prism Silver, BGS 9.5? And we're going to get into that really heavy, but first we got to pay the bills. I don't know if you guys know this, but I just released a Patreon for everybody who listens to the podcast. This is a way for you guys to kind of join in on the fun, follow what I'm buying, what I'm selling. I update it about every 2 or 3 weeks, and it's just for those of you who don't really need the full premium membership, but still kind of want to see what plays me and the group are buying, and also have access to some of those membership perks. So right now, for less than a cup of coffee, you can go to the Patreon, join, support the show, and again, get access to those plays. You're also going to get an invite to our members only Discord that's going to be launching next month. And you're going to help support this podcast and the overall community. So if you haven't already, definitely check out the Patreon. The link's in the description below. Go ahead, sign up for that. It means a lot to me. Outside of that, I also want to give a huge shout out to Sports Card Investor. He's providing members of our groups 20% off of his Market Movers Tour. So if you've been looking to sign up for the Market Movers Tour and you're a part of the premium membership or the Patreon, you do have access to that 20% off code. You can find that code within the Patreon or within the daily newsletter you get from the premium membership. So yeah, definitely check those out, guys. It really helps out the show, helps me keep making this content, and it's just a lot of fun. Join the community. It's totally worth it. All right, let's get back to the show. You also find that when you buy these rare cards, the margins just aren't as good. Like if you're spending $300 on a card, you're lucky to get like $450 back for it. After you calculate fees and everything, you made $75. Like at one point we were buying cards at $50 and selling them for $200. Now we're buying cards at $300 and selling them for $450. We're risking a lot more money and we're making a lot less on the back end. And that isn't good investing. Yeah, we have cool cards. Yeah, we have clout, but are we getting our best return? There's so many of us who are passing up the opportunity to buy a card at $5 and sell it for $20, 10 times over, just so we can go buy a card for, for $50 and sell it for $100. Like, yeah, that $50 card's a lot cooler, but is that the best place to put your money? And that's what I was really trying to break down to him. This brings us back to my old blog post that I spoke about earlier in the podcast. If you want to go read it, it's entitled Prism Base is a Better Buy Than Prism Silver. This blog post got a lot of attention, a lot of love. Gary Vee retweeted it. A couple people retweeted it. And, I really broke down all the math. Like if you buy Prism Base cards, you're probably going to profit a lot more than you would if you buy a Prism Silver card. I think a really good example of this is Jason Tatum. We've all seen his cards rise up recently. They've doubled in price. I want to say Jason Tatum's, PSA 10 was going for around $200. Had you had bought 10 of those, you would have spent $2,000, and now they're selling for around close to $400. So you would have doubled your money. At the time, I think his Prism Silver was going for like $800. Had you had $2,000, you would have been able to get 2 of those, and they're going for around $1,300 now, and that puts you at $2,600. Like you just didn't make that much more money. Yeah, you're cooler. These cards are dope, but you missed out on a grand opportunity to profit your money. Not to mention, again, we kind of go back to those points we made earlier in the podcast. Buying that card for $800 and then selling it for $1,200. Well, now you got to look at finding the right buyer. You got to worry about returns. You got to worry about if somebody's going to scam you of the full $1,200. And a lot of your money's locked up into one card, as opposed to if you had those 10 Prism Base. Well, if you get a return, it's just for a couple $100 because, 10 people aren't going to scam you. At least we hope not. And it gives you the opportunity to kind of sell as needed. Maybe you don't need to sell all 10. Maybe you just need a couple $100. You flip 3 of them and you keep 7, and now you're still locked in. Maybe you sell, as much as your initial investment, and you keep whatever ones you have on the side. You get a lot more flexibility when it comes to having these base cards as opposed to these silver cards, because you're able to kind of dollar cost average your way out. You also just have the liquidity, the option of being able to sell them. It's a lot easier to move a card at $300 than it is to move one at $1,200. If you need that money right away, you're more than likely going to be like, hey, I got this PSA 10, Jason Tatum for sale. It's $350. Boom. Somebody says yes, you got your money, you're good to go. Same day transaction. When you're trying to sell a Prism PSA 10 silver, it's like a 4 or 5 day thing. You got to, again, wait for the right person, the right buyer. The person has to have the money. They have to see the value. The negotiations between the cards. You're trying to get top dollar. They're like, hey, there's one that ended last week for $1,100. With the, there's so much difference in terms of liquidity that the prices don't always match up. With the base, there's a base sold every day. So you're like, look, these are going $350 nonstop. There's no negotiating here. The last 15 went $350. 15 sold today. So like you kind of get a nice base price to sell. When you're dealing with these rare cards, there's no base price. You don't know the true value of these cards. There's too many factors. They're based on who's willing to bid, who's willing to buy, who's willing to pay. Once that, Jason Tatum fan buys that Prism Silver, maybe they're not buying anymore. They're out of the game. They're out of the Jason Tatum Silver game. They're not bidding anymore. So then the prices take a small dip. There's just so much to think about when it comes to these higher end cards. And like, I don't know about you guys, but we're not in this space to be thinking really hard. We're in this space to make money. We're in this space to flip. We're in this space because we want to see profits. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of us like cards and we love cards and they're becoming the thing, but ultimately our goal is to make money. And if that's our ultimate goal, then we have to start looking at these base cards, these quote unquote, common cards as a play. It's not about being fancy. It's not about being sexy. It's about profit. It's about margins. Now, obviously, this always isn't the case. We got to use some common sense here. Sometimes there is going to be that one-off chance where this rule is broken. I'd rather have a Giannis Prism Silver right now than I would, 5 Giannis base cards because, well, there's more money in the silver. So if you can do some math and kind of figure it out, then do that. But in most cases, you're probably safer with the base. I think right now, if you were to buy Michael Porter Jr.'s Prism PSA 10 at $50, that's probably a better buy than buying his silver at $200. Let's just say Michael Porter Jr. hit Trae Young prices. Well, then his silver will be worth $600, and then his Prism PSA 10 will be worth $200. So that's $800 versus $600. So you'd made an extra $200 just by going with those base cards. The answers are in the math, guys. It's all fundamentals. It's all fundamentals. It's super simple, and it just makes more sense. If you want more details on this, something a little more organized, if you want to be able to visualize these numbers or see some charts or some comparisons, definitely check out the blog post. I'll leave it down below in the description as well. I know this episode was a little more ranty, but it's just something that I really want to drill into you guys. I want to drill that home, and again, if you're somebody who's buying silvers and golds and galactics and all that stuff, don't always listen to me. There's definitely ways to make money in those things. I'm just letting you guys know about the pure fundamentals. I too am guilty of, kind of over investing in rare cards. And I'm finding that when I want to move those cards, it's really hard. So this is something that I've known for a while, but I think it's time to start taking my own advice. And I'm just putting it out there so you guys might be able to follow it. I'm going to be looking at taking a less sexy route when it comes to investing. I got Michael Porter Jr. blues and red, choice autographs. And when I try to move those cards, it's just like people just tend to pass. It's not because they're not worth anything, because they are, but it's just not as liquid as, Prism base. Had I had, 10 Prism base instead of that optic blue, I probably would have been able to sell a lot more of those and take some profits. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. Hope it wasn't too all over the place. Be sure to check out everything in the description below. Again, it just really helps me. I love that you guys support. If you don't want to sign up for the Patreon, or you don't want to agree to anything monthly, then don't forget I do have the Cash App. It's High Upside Show. I take all donations. We got the camera, so we're going to be doing video podcasts starting in June. Now we're just trying to get the microphone. So everything that you guys have contributed thus far has really helped. I really appreciate you guys helping to grow this channel. Be sure to share this, leave a review for it, all that good stuff. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Happy investing.